basically jump in the loom and explain how I booked a call with the head of GTM of Miro using our own product. It is like 40% of the people who see that video end up signing up.
All right, Walid, thank you for joining me for Founders Chat today. We've had a couple of chats on LinkedIn. We've been back and forth in there a few times, commented on posts, etc. And great to see someone else who's active in that space. And I guess appropriately so. Your current company, WaLead.ai, is obviously moving into that space in the B2B marketing. Walid, I'd love to, for our listeners and for people in our community to understand, can you just give us a bit of background on where you've come from and how you came to found your current venture?
All right. Nice to meet you, Luke. I'm really happy to be here. I have been following Baremetrics for a couple of years now. And now we are users, so I'm pretty happy with that. So yeah, I'm 23 years old. I started from when I was like 14 years old. I was an esports pro player, so in a game called Clash Royale. So I started working on that since 14 until 18. When I was 18, I was making my parents' salaries in the esports, so it was a bit crazy, And and then I have been saving money for all that, and then I took it and went from Spain to the UK and started studying the physics and maths degree. And once I finished the physics degree, I was thinking I was working while doing this, because if not, it was like a bit boring.
Right.
So so I was doing like some safe stuff, because when I was in the UK, there were like a lot of demand from Spanish companies that wanted to open the UK market, and they needed someone that wants to sell and has like the Spanish and English language. So I started doing that. And once I have been doing it for a while, then I realized that I was happier doing the job rather than studying, and I finished my physics degree and decided that I won't be physicist. So that was crazy for my parents. They was like, what the hell you're doing, but and then I started.
How'd that conversation go over dinner? Yeah, I imagine.
That's like, for them was like nonsense, like, what are you doing? And they also like prefer like to have a safe job, My father was like, you will get a job like teacher or professor or something, and they will pay you every month.
Yeah.
He was more about
it's
that.
just that one of those generational things, right? That one, security, predictability. Yeah.
Exactly. So when you finish with 21 years and the degree, you don't have money and you don't have knowledge. So in that case, the one of the best choices you can do is to start a service business, because you'll have time, you can learn, you don't need money. So that's how I started a marketing agency. Yeah.
So LinkedIn's gone through some variations over the years in how successful it is for outbound or engagement in general. What sort of made you want to focus on LinkedIn as a channel for your product?
In the marketing agency, we were like a lead generation agency specialized in LinkedIn, because that was like because back then in 2021, 2022, if you wanted to start like a new agency, it was much easier to start on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn was like popping. And if you want to do the same, like search engine optimization or Google Ads or any other thing, you are like, there is like a lot of competition, lots of competitors, pretty hard to get there. So as I was doing LinkedIn before for the companies, they hired me to prospect and all that, it was more easier. And I started doing that. I had to use like other softwares, third-party softwares. In that back then was like I was using Apollo, Sys Navigator, some automation tools like Waxy. In 2022, for example, RB2B or HeyRich or Clay, they didn't exist. So this is like more 2024 stuff, And I started doing this, started scaling my agency until there was a point where I couldn't do it more because of I lacked like software problems, because most of the softwares in back then were prepared for using one by one, like you will use it for yourself, but it's not like for a team to scale, to add a lot of channels. So it was impossible to scale the LinkedIn outreach with that software. Even with the software we have today, it's hard. That's why we built the WaLead.ai.
Yeah. Okay, nice. So lacking a bit of a custom solution, you saw the problem there and you tried to fill it, or are filling it at the moment with WaLead. Tell us a little bit more about sort of LinkedIn and the framework that you've got going for WaLead. One of your posts. I think you mentioned the whole fail, learn, repeat mantra. I'm a big fan of that. We're a big fan of experimentation and essentially saying, what are we going to fail this month in order to, eliminate certain outcomes as opposed to identify the one that we will, go be successful. What's your take on that? And, what's something that maybe did you have a big LinkedIn failure that you had to learn from real quick and move on to the next thing?
Yeah, so my recommendation will be for any B2B company starting now on LinkedIn, September 2025, what's working best is to post LinkedIn content, you and your founders, right? To try to do it public because it will be easier. Because if you think about it, no one or just 1% of people or less want to share their metrics, So if you share your metrics, you will get a lot of eyeballs because you are the only one in your space, probably. So Baremetrics is 100% amazing for this, So this will be one of my strategies. Try to build in public, be as transparent as you go, and you will get a lot of surprises because, for example, in our case, a lot of guys just reach out to help. They are not interested in anything else because they feel your band, and what you are saying. The second thing I will do is for the content you are creating, push it with LinkedIn ads because it's like really cheap. You can add 50K, 60K monthly impressions for like $200, 300. Yeah, it's really cheap, at least here in Spain. So I will also do that. And third thing, I would do outreach because right now it's still easier to set up your LinkedIn outreach rather than fight with the cold emailing.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I guess with that, you identified Sales Navigator. It's probably like a competitor for you, but it's a little bit more stale, right? And a bit pay to play. What's your approach to Sales Navigator on LinkedIn versus WaLead?
Yeah, so we have a lot of users that use Sales Navigator to import the leads in our software, but most of the users use it just for creating databases because Sales Navigator only gives you 50 emails. So our software is more like messaging. So in our software, you can get like 800 connections monthly, and then you can prospect to all these 800 leads for only one account. Of course, it will not be 800 because you will get like 50% acceptance rate or something. It will be 400, but it's still much more than Sales Navigator. So my main competitors in the space are like HeyReach, Lemlist, Galaxy, this kind of companies.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I think just looping back to your transition from working in that agency, was there a point in time, did you always have the idea of building a platform for LinkedIn, or was there, you mentioned the frustration of there's nothing really suitable to your needs while you're in that agency? I guess a lot of founders find themselves in that position. They're either in a job, they're in a venture somewhere, they're working particularly in a niche part of the industry, and they have this pain, right? And then they want to solve that. For us and for our founder, he was working inside the Stripe ecosystem. Stripe was very data heavy, really hard to sort of pull out meaningful insights. And so he built Baremetrics to suit Stripe, and then we were able to expand into other connectors and other payment platforms. For you, what was that sort of transition from custom client work, and was it this persistent problem that came up to moving into a platform? And I guess maybe what is it about was there one particular pain point that you focused on first, or did you know that LinkedIn just needed a robust overall tool that you were going to build for?
Yeah, really good question. So, but back then, the thing is, you could make LinkedIn work for you as a channel, but it was impossible to scale it because in our case, we were scaling because we were adding more and more clients with all the accounts. For example, in my case, we had to have like one Chrome extension for each LinkedIn account. It means if a client has 5 LinkedIn accounts, I needed 5 Chrome extension like sessions. So we ended up with tons of Chrome extension sessions. And because every one of the software was ready for hosting one LinkedIn account. It was like most of the software were made for one person to use it, not for a team. So that's when we discovered another tool called Go Login, where you can have all the Chrome extensions at the same time. The problem is it was still a mess because you have to manage it in folders and then in each one of the link, and then you have to spend much more money because you will also need a browser, you will need proxies working at the same time. It was a heavy mess for an agency to run, And even look, when I wanted to, for example, if you want to answer your leads, like the client's leads, because there were like a lot of clients that want the agency to manage them too, like they only want the last result, they want the meeting.
Yeah.
They,
Yeah. Come.
they don't want to spend time answering the messages. So for that case, you have to do the same. You have to go to one LinkedIn account, open it every day, answer the messages, check again 2 hours later, check again 2 hours later. This a couple of times every day for each one of the LinkedIn accounts for all your clients. So it's a mess. So what we solve this is we solve this by allowing a company to import several LinkedIn accounts to have it all unified. So you have one inbox to answer all the leads. And you can also you don't have to worry about the proxies, navigators, all this kind of stuff. We handle this and it's much easier for the end user. And also
Okay.
you can do multi-account campaigns because with all these softwares, you can only use one account per campaign. So you have to create a lot of campaigns that are basically the same and add one person to each one of them because there were no concept of doing multi-account rotation.
Okay, interesting. And I think you've mentioned before this leads into it, you sort of touched on this question already, but you posted on LinkedIn before that most sales are lost by not doing necessary follow-ups. So obviously WaLead.ai helps you with that. What do you think? How do you think you integrate with a traditional CRM where, say for me, LinkedIn as a channel is probably one part of my engagement? Do you nest well with CRMs where I can send out emails, maybe phone calls, LinkedIn connection, LinkedIn posts, etc.? How does WaLead work with traditional CRMs?
Yeah, we have an integration with Google Sheets. So anything that plugs in with Google Sheets we can send the data.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So we use it like a universal Zapier, right? You just go to Zapier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they reply, or if you mark it as interested in anything of this, we will send automatically the data to Google Sheets, and you can have a webhook or Zapier to send it to your CRM. So we have the Unibox, and most of the people pre-qualify the leads there. And once they have a qualified lead or the meeting, then they send it to the CRM.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. I think that's part of it too, right? Is if you have a platform that's easy to integrate with existing systems, that makes it, pretty much a given that it's going to work alongside them. And if it's working along CSV driven or sheet driven systems, that's great. Pivoting a little bit into that early play, you mentioned before how maybe LinkedIn advertising or LinkedIn promoter posts are cheaper in Spain. You're building in, is it Tarragona, I believe?
Yeah.
Yeah. So not Silicon Valley, not New York. You've mentioned Spanish-speaking support as a differentiator. We've had requests for Spanish-speaking support sometimes as well. Has that shaped your go-to-market strategy, and was it deliberate? Do you want to start with that geography, or was it just a matter of your local comfort of being in that space?
Yeah. So we were just here, so we thought this is the way, and also because the competitors I have in the market, most of them grow to 10 million. For example, Wanax is 10 million ARR, Lemlist is 32 million ARR, and they did it whether bootstrapping or seed strapping. So yeah, that gave us some hope to do it. But being here, it overcomplicates stuff, of course, because you don't have access to that BC ecosystem or business angels and all that you can have in other countries. But the good thing is you have access to cheap talent, because if I wanted to get the same talent in the USA, I would be paying 4 times what we are paying right now or more. So because everything there is more expensive. So I also think it's a good way of doing it, because you will sell your products abroad, and you will try to get your clients in the USA or other markets, but your expenses are here in Spain. So it is more or less compensated,
Yeah, and I guess it's an advantage for you, right? If you can support that push and you're better suited to do it than others, then that's an opportunity you have that others may not.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Well, let's jump into some metrics, because that's what Baremetrics is all about. And I've seen you posting in public on LinkedIn and everything else around that space. I do the same sort of thing, right? I've been trying to post every day, if not a couple of times a day, on relevant, interesting things. We don't necessarily build in public to the sense of a startup founder, but we certainly talk about what we're doing and what we're seeing in the market across the board. You've got a metric out there called average follow-up attempts. which I believe is it's like a marketing metric, I guess, or an outbound metric. Is that something you have found to be a successful predictor of close? So from first point of contact through to closing a deal or getting a demo, what's that how does that metric come to be, and how should I effectively be monitoring it?
So you mean the metric of conversion rate or something?
I think your platform tracks average follow-up attempts, right? As you go through, and how many times have you attempted to follow up on the individual before moving them on? So I guess maybe to reshape the question, we have a core standard in our playbook. We say 6 follow-ups before moving to an automated drip. What's your approach to that average follow-up cadence, and what should I be looking to target?
Normally we do like 2 to 3 follow-ups, I think we may be losing some of the business because we should do more follow-ups. But the thing is, as you are growing and you have a lot of new leads opportunities, we still don't have the time to follow up the other ones. So we are doing it from 2 to 3 follow-ups. And lately we are trying to qualify better the leads so that if we are trying to convert them without going to a demo. Because if not, we have a lot of demos for small qualified or small budget accounts. So we prefer we basically have recorded we have recorded a loop that for me is the killer video, because I basically jump in the loop and explain how I booked a call with the head of GTM of Miro using our own product. And basically, you don't know if it is 40% of the people who see that video end up signing up, So in the inbox for that person, if I see it's not qualified enough to have a meeting, I try to send him the video to see if he can watch it. And if he watches it, then he will be impressed because it gives you the wow effect, and he will want to jump in and sign up.
Very cool. So quick loom into messages has been proven to be a highly successful conversion rate tactic.
Yeah. But you need a good video. Actually, I am looking to scale this. I want to do some campaigns focusing on Salesforce executive, HubSpot executive, this kind of big companies. And it's not because they are not my ICP, but it's only to get the meeting, to show it on our website, so people have wow, I can do this.
Yeah, got it. That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great push. I've often engaged with quirky, engaging videos as opposed to messages, particularly where they're personalized, where they speak to me or the company particularly, and are just short, unobtrusive, and easy to understand. So I think that's a great play. What other metrics do you follow? Actually, two-part question. What's your first metric you look at when you look at your dashboards of a morning, or when you jump into the business? And then secondly, I guess, what LinkedIn metrics should our users be looking for as a measure of success to track?
Okay, so every day we check Baremetrics. This is 100%. I may check Stripe one time every 2 days, but we check Baremetrics 3 to 4 times per day. And normally when I go to Baremetrics, the first thing I want to see if there are new customers today and if there are churns. So that's the first thing I check every day. Because if there are churn, I have to be fast and send them a message and ask what's the reason to improve our platform. Because if not, I will lose that opportunity to learn, So I try to monitor these guys, the churn rate every day and see who is churning to send them a message. I think that's because right now we have a low churn rate. And one of the reasons is I am the one handling the customer success. So I do all my efforts to make it work good. I am sure that if an employee does it in the future, it won't be that good because he will not be answering at this early in the morning or later the night, But right now I'm trying to do it myself, and that's also users appreciate it. So I would say metrics, churn rate, who is churning, if there are new customers, and then I check the MRR. That's the main metrics I see.
Very cool. Great to hear. Love that little soundbite. Check Baremetrics first thing of the morning, several times during the day. It's always good. That's great to hear. Yeah, I think LinkedIn has a lot of different ways to gauge what your intent is, whether it is general engagement, if you want to build your followers, if you want to get them onto then engaging your content to convert to deals versus obviously using it as an outbound channel. an automated channel. So that's really interesting. Maybe to wrap things up, can you give it for our listeners and for our wider sort of startup ecosystem? You've talked about having your LinkedIn profile as a conversion tool. You obviously push a lot of thought leadership around how to build an effective LinkedIn profile, to have good conversations, to talk to the right people. What would be your sort of top 10 tips? Doesn't have to be 10, just that sort of concept of top tips for building an effective LinkedIn campaign and approach.
Okay, that's a good question. So the first thing is, it's like the first thing you have to optimize your profile, like try to have everything up to date, like the banners, take out all the irrelevant information from your profile, add also the custom button, the links, and set up what are you expecting from your profiles. Like you want the lead to know you, and then you want him to go to where? Is it like a landing? Is a web page? Is a demo? So you have to have all that like defined. Once you have this, you need to define who is your ICP, because depending on who is your ICP, you should post some content or other content because you are trying to attract him, right? Also, if you are starting from zero, then I will, in parallel of publishing content, I will start connecting with all these people. You can automate it, and you will be like increasing your audience like from 400, 500 people every month, and they will build your ICP. So it is easier for them to then talk with you. Another tip is at the beginning, you have to comment a lot because you need to get impressions, and a good comment can get you a lot of good impressions in Spain, in someone's post. So I will comment a lot, and I will try to comment like a lot of value in that post. So just if you comment 10 times a day, but it is like valuable, then you will get a lot of impressions and people will know you, and then they will go to your profile, right? So that's one of the steps. Then when you will start building the posts, you need to take into account that it has to be like a hook and then body and then CTA. So that's like the most effective thing. And at the beginning, you can also start doing a lot of lead magnets that basically you give a lot of value, then you ask for a comment so that you send the lead magnet to him. It can get you a lot of impressions at the beginning.
Yeah, I've noticed, actually, I said this to my content marketer last week, Andrew. I said, hey, that last comment I made actually got more impressions than my daily post. And it was on the back of a very engaging sort of thread, right? And people had a lot to say about it. So that made sense. And I think for me, that's probably something I need to shift in my strategy. Like I mentioned, I've been focused really on producing content, general sort of observations about the market, observations about running a SaaS company. And I get, occasionally I'll see some spike, right? And I'll try and replicate that and do something different, something similar the next time. But it doesn't always scale the same way each time. But you're right in that I've found really engaging threads, really good back and forth comments and replies that are actually talking about something with substance. I've had great engagement from it. So I think maybe that's something for me to take away and shift my approach as well. So that's great to hear.
Also, when you manage to users to post LinkedIn content on LinkedIn about you, that also gives you a lot of distribution. And I think you are doing a great job with that because you are getting mentions for all the companies that are using Baremetrics.
Yeah, and that's the great thing to see. When I see that notification pop up to say Baremetrics has been mentioned, jumping straight in there and commenting off the back of that is great. And I love hearing how people are using our dashboards. The best thing I love is a comment saying, where'd you get that dashboard from, to someone who's talking about it, right? It's like, hey, Baremetrics, let's go. So yeah, that's really great and really nice to hear when it comes out of
Because it's been like a really shareable dashboard panel, you know?
Yeah, we've got some tweaks we want to make there. Like we want to make it easier as opposed to just screenshots. We'd love to be able to have an export and, a watermark as well so people know exactly where it's come from. But I do think we have a pretty recognizable aesthetic now as well. A lot of people recognize our graphs more than just sort of the Stripe graph or any of our competitors. So that's always nice as well. But yeah, we're certainly trying to make it easier for people to share in public. Walid, I want to be respectful of your time. You've been great this morning. I think you have a really good chat. Is there any questions for me? Do we want to wrap the call up with that we can talk about?
Yeah, of course. So one of my questions, look, is have you thought about having like a public Baremetrics for Baremetrics?
Yeah, we absolutely did. So Baremetrics, I don't know if you followed the journey complete from founder to now. Baremetrics was one of the early open startups on the open dashboard. We were acquired by a private equity company in 2020. And with a private equity company investment comes a few sensitivities around revenue figures and other public facing figures. So we had to take ourselves down from that board just through some requests from the investment board and sort of as to whether it was appropriate for us to continue to share public metrics when we weren't a founder-led startup anymore. And so we did take away from that. I do try and share as much as I can around without giving sort of particular figures. We can talk about growth rates, and I think you might have seen my Indie Hackers article a few months ago now. I was able to say that my next revenue milestone is sort of like 10 million ARR, trying to get to that point of saying we're around about this space, but we're not there. We're not at this exact number. Yeah, I think it would be a great place for us to be, and I'd love to. But unfortunately, I think it's one of those things we won't be able to necessarily pursue.
Okay, and look, and are you running like outreach in your company, or it is like more ads inbound?
Yeah, so we do run a small amount of outbound, and what we found is we generally run what we would call warm outbound, right? And we're not using automation tools. We're not using sort of your RB2Bs or your retentions or warm leads or clays or anything like that. We're more looking at that quarterly cadence of saying, okay, who came through like 2 quarters ago, and reaching out to them and doing a dedicated outbound campaign to bring them back into the loop. And that's been quite successful. We found that actually Baremetrics users, while we have a 2-week trial, we generally have a sales cycle of closer to about 100 days. So we're looking at about 3 months, 3.5 months. And the reason is that because a lot of people come to us that aren't in a buying state at that point in time, or they have an immediate pain where they needed a report for a deck or for an investor presentation, but they weren't ready to go and actually commit to the subscription yet. So we work with those people over time to build that sort of trust and that reportability. There's also the idea that really metrics at any point in time really only become useful when you're identifying trends and watching them evolve and adjusting and experimenting and doing all that sort of stuff. So people generally tap back in occasionally to see what's changed, and then they'll come back for full time. So long answer is yes, we are doing sort of warm outbound. We don't have a particular outbound cadence yet that we're aggressively pushing outside of that.
Okay, look, I think you have to try a trick I did the other day. So basically, my software is outbound,
Yeah.
But what we did is now when you sign up, in order to create your workspace, we ask the user, add your LinkedIn profile so that we know who is the owner of the workspace, right? So they add their LinkedIn profile, and then we push that data to our software automatically as a webhook, right? So the same day the guy sign up, he receives an invitation from me, and then I ask him the message. I send him a message asking him like how did he met us, how he know us, like if I can help him, what's the use case he wants to do. And once he answers, I start recording audios to help him. So we establish our like relationship, and for example, the reply rate to a girl is 83%.
Wow.
Because no one is doing this. No one is like, you sign up in a tool, the same day you get an invitation from the CEO of the company. So I think that if you try to do it, you will get a lot of insights. And of course, I think you have like a lot of volume for doing it yourself, and maybe it can be like a campaign with other employees. But something like this can give you a lot of insights, and probably you will get like a higher conversion rate.
Yeah, it's that's absolutely something we've put into play. And you're right, it didn't scale. So what we actually did was we reduced it down to high value leads. And so for Baremetrics, we have, brand new startups sign up pre-revenue, maybe a couple of subscriptions, and they just want to see what they should be looking at. And that's fine. When we get companies that are already doing 200, 300K MRR, we can see that they've got really tight subscription model. We see that the point of contact is the CEO or maybe the head of operations or something like that. I will absolutely reach out via LinkedIn. And I think, Walid, one of them, you're right about receiving feedback. One of the most interesting bits of feedback I had reaching out to a couple of different startups that were in sort of maybe the middle growth phase, maybe 50 to 100K MRR. I reached out via LinkedIn straight away and said, hey, thanks for coming. Just wondering, what is it you want to see? You guys signed up and I saw this in your account. What are you doing about this? They said, oh, actually, we just wanted to see what your onboarding flow was like, because we are trying to replicate one for our SaaS company. And so they were actually just coming in to see what sort of toolbox email we sent them, what was our follow-up cadence like, what was the experience of getting connected to Stripe and everything else. So that was kind of good and bad in that it was like, oh, okay, you're not actually a lead, but it gave me some great feedback to say, well, hey, maybe our process isn't that bad if people are using us as a benchmark. And I also had a really great conversation with the individual in the end. And it turns out he is pursuing a side project that is a SaaS company, and he wants to talk more about getting onto Baremetrics with them. So it was absolutely a valuable conversation to have. And I think it's the timing is you're right. People are engaged in your brand at that time. They're expecting to see something from you, and to see a personalized outbound from the CEO certainly elevates that level of conversation. So I can appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, and I also read a post this week. There was a guy saying that he had an experience in Baremetrics, and the customer support was that good that he was going to fix it in his own software because it's like a complete different experience. So I suppose, yeah, there are lots of people benchmarking you when it comes to onboarding, support, and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's great. I love that feedback. I'm really happy with that. And yeah, support is one of our benchmarks, one of our cornerstones of success. We have a sub 5-minute response time during business hours. That's a hardline KPI for us. And we continue to push that as much as we can. And we have stuck with personal support. We haven't gone AI. We don't have any AI bots in there, agents, etc. And we'll do that for as long as we can, right? As long as we can scale that human support. I feel like there's still a really great feedback loop when you're talking to a human now. And yes, agents are getting there, AI getting to the point where it's indistinguishable sometimes. But for us, if we can keep it as a point of difference, then we'll continue to pursue that for sure.
100%, because people normally want to talk to a human, you know?
Yeah, and it's a different conversation. Absolutely. Yeah. Walid, thank you so much for your time this morning. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up? I think we've covered a lot of good topics. I love that we've moved between your sort of origin story, moving away from maybe what your parents really wanted to see you in, and moving into something a little bit more risky and out there, but absolutely starting to succeed in that space. We talked about your movement from being part of an agency and identifying a particular pain point with how you were using LinkedIn for outbound, and it wasn't a useful solution for you. So that's how we got to be in WaLead.ai. And then we talked about some hygienes and best practice around using LinkedIn as an effective lead tool. Anything else we missed?
No, I think it's fine.
Awesome. Walid, thank you so much for your time, mate. Great to talk to you. Like I said on LinkedIn, we can do another session if you want to talk about your metrics in particular and jump into some sort of growth experimentation. Love those sort of chats. But overall, thanks for being part of Founders Chats today, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Perfect. See you guys.
Thanks, Walid. Bye.